Hey, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this episode of the Peering Podcast. I'm Mark Hamill. We've got Mike on the call as usual. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Hey, doing good, Mark. Good to see you.
Who's our special guest today?
Oh, let me tell you. Let me tell you. Yeah, everybody, welcome back to the Peering Podcast, in which we peer into the power of peer advisory boards and where the category is going next to tap into agility powered by collective intelligence. We're going to explore the why, what, who, how, where, and when of peer advisory boards by having guests of all kinds and having a fireside chat with live listeners able to join in the conversation. And I am delighted to say today that we are joined by Les Morgan. Welcome, Les.
Hey, Les.
Good afternoon. Hey, guys.
Yes, that's right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, depending upon where you are.
And good night.
And good night. That comes later, yes. So listen, everybody, we are blessed to have Les. We're so excited that he is coming on board as a forum leader for REF in the UK. And he really knows his stuff because, amongst many other things, he was Scotland's first director of the Leadership Trust. And for 2 decades and more already, he's been building his own business focused on leadership values and trust, including being chairman for 10 years of the first charity in Scotland to create, operationalize, and measure values and leadership and trust. He does deep dives, and I'm sure we're going to get into this today, not just into the IQ of competence, but even more so the EQ of character. And for which he's developed his own framework. No doubt we'll hear more about that as we go along. And one of the things that, Les, when you and I first started talking, you talked about the contrast between escaping and inscaping, which no doubt we're going to have a great conversation about. Welcome, Les. How are you today?
I'm all good. There's snow on the ground and the ski slopes are opening, so I'm perfectly happy.
Because Les is up in Scotland, everybody. And
in the Highlands.
In the Highlands of Scotland. And my wife is Scottish. We got married 30 years ago in Moffat in Dumfriesshire in Scotland. Wow. And so I have a great affinity with Scotland. Mark, have you spent much time up there?
Yeah, my kids go to school up beside where Les lives. So we have a house there. We're there every couple of weeks just to check in on the kids, and absolutely one of the most beautiful parts of the world. Absolutely love it.
So Les, let's start here by perhaps would you tell us more about kind of the combination of things that you focus on and that you do and that align with your passion, and kind of what was the journey by which you kind of got here?
Yeah, for me, there's 3 crucial aspects to any successful organization, whether it's public, private, or voluntary, which is leadership, trust, and values. You put those pillars in and things will be far smoother. And for me, that fell out of, in some ways, my slightly troubled childhood and getting in trouble with the law at times, and a teacher seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself.
Wait. Are you telling me, Les, that you were a troublemaker? I just can't believe that.
I also still have a letter from the police about shopping some guys that were breaking into cars. So, I have a positive letter from the police as well as various interviews at other times when I kind of went off the rails.
Yeah. Troubled childhood. Yeah.
But Mr. McAlpine, who was the head of geography, and this is where I start differentiating, a bit like leadership and management, education and schooling. Schooling comes from the Greek scholi, which means to put into, education from the Latin educare, which is to lead out of.
Nice.
What we have in the Western world is we have schooling, we do not have education. And I had a head teacher in geography that was more into education and schooling. I used to be late in, and because I'd probably broken into the school a few times before this, I knew which windows that I could climb in to avoid my name getting taken for late coming.
Just be careful, Les. There are no crimes you're still wanted for, are there?
Apart from painting Perth from the town centre to the school as to Kerr's Cafe, because he was the rector. And the messages were posted on certain people's walls,
awesome.
which weren't appreciated.
Hey, by the way, we've got Lara here with us. Welcome, Lara. Thanks for being here today. Keep going, Les.
So
sorry, wasn't really sure what this call was about, but
it's about you, Lara.
Podcast.
It's about you.
Keep going, Les.
Not a chance.
So for me, it was he suddenly, in my latter years in school, made me a prefect, which meant that somehow he thought I was responsible enough to get to school early to take the names of the latecomers when I'd been a latecomer for the previous few years. And suddenly that responsibility, along with then rugby captain, basketball captain, athletics captain, it just showed me a different side of things that became interesting in terms of teamwork. And as I rose through the ranks of, because I was a trained PE teacher, but I never taught, I went into leisure management, because at that point, there were 8 regions in Scotland, and a region can put you to any school that they wanted. And there are various schools in Scotland, especially, that I didn't want to go to. So I took my sort of career in my own hands and applied for leisure industry jobs. So that's back in the mid-70s. Because these things called sports centres were appearing all over the place.
Right.
And what I learned through that, and then becoming involved in national sports in Scotland with playing for Scotland, basketball-wise, is the whole team aspect and the sharing of intelligence, knowledge, teamwork, strength, character, all of that. So when we created when I was finally head of a department of leisure, the team I put together, we did in those days the Belden, team skills,
right,
different aspects, so that people became far more self-aware, and there was less of a hierarchy, and roles were given out according to people's strengths. So even although I was maybe director, certain people would do things that a director would normally do because they were quite frankly better at it. So not that I understood it at the time, but that was more the emotional intelligence, because especially in local government, it's a hierarchical, Newtonian, hierarchical, black and white, command and control. And what we created in the department was exactly the opposite. And what was interesting is we won Leisure Centre of the Year award, we won Ski Slope of the Year award, we won Leisure Department of the Year award. So in a very small authority in an old mining community in County Durham, they actually got a lot of national coverage because we turned leisure into health. I used to have something that said sport was 60, recreation was 70, leisure was 80, and pleasure, spelled Pleisure, would be 90s. And the whole of that turning leisure into, because in the UK, we don't actually have a national health service, even though they're all on strike today. We don't have a national health service. We have a national sickness service.
Yes,
the only time you go is when you're sick.
The UK has regressed back into the 70s and 80s this week, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Wow, what a really cool story. So hang on a minute. Let's back up the truck here. Did you say that you played basketball for the Scotland team? Did you say that?
Yep.
Does that mean you're very tall, Les? I've never seen you stand up.
Les is very tall. Les is very tall.
Well, I was the small guy that played pivot, so I'm 6'3". My coach has always said, Les, you play 6'6".
But you know what
I was playing against the likes of Fred Petty at the time, who's 7'2" and played for England.
Wow. But you know what I really love about that? And you and I haven't really spoken about this so much so far, but in all of my work around agility and trying to help people understand what agility is and what it isn't and how to apply it in business, of course, I talk about sport a lot. And I talk about games in particular that have one team on the court or on the field at any one time, as opposed to two specialist teams, offense, defense, like in American football. Obviously, American football is still a good analogy, but soccer, basketball, ice hockey, a game that really ebbs and flows from defense to offense is a fantastic analogy of agility. And I think, therefore, your work around the difference between IQ and EQ and trust and leadership and values, what a great real world experience to be able to draw on, Les. That's phenomenal.
And I think the key thing with basketball is that everybody basically, more so than soccer or football, everybody in basketball is a scorer. So everybody can score. So unlike netball, which for me is a game of don'ts, don't cross the line, don't bounce the ball, don't. Yeah. Basketball, it really is a team, and anybody can score. Yeah. And especially if I'm the big guy getting the ball out of the hoop, if somebody's just scored, if I have a setup with a guard, he's already halfway up the court for the swift pass for the score before they've even got into defense.
Yeah. Mark, did you ever play basketball? Are you tall? I've never seen you stand up, Mark. Are you tall enough to play basketball?
I'm taller than Les, slightly. So I'm 6'4". Myself and Les have met up a couple of times. I think we were always being the tallest in the room. No, rugby was my sport. So again, another team sport. Absolutely, have rugby boots, will travel the world, play games.
Well, I'm also 6'4", so we
can set up our
anyway. Let's get back. Let's get back on track here. Let's get back on track. So keep going.
You're not 6 foot above 6 foot. You're out of this organisation.
So Les, let's get back on track, Les. So continue telling us, Les. How did you then? It's becoming clear, but finish off. How did you arrive at your focus that you have today, and what is that focus? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So when we were creating that leisure department, I applied to go on. There was a local government training board at that time. It was run by the government for prospective directors and chief execs in local government. And I went on the sort of directors one, and the organisation, which was a UK-wide organisation, asked me to come on the chief execs one. And what blew my mind at the time was I was the guy that ended up on doing all the errands on the bike and abseiling off a bridge at 60 feet to make things happen and get us to the goal. And I had always seen chief execs as people that were certainly better than me in many respects, because from a very working class background in the housing estate with the gangs back in the 60s in Perth. And suddenly I thought, hang on a minute, it's actually about how you conduct yourself and how you connect. And actually, it's forming the relationships actually before the results. It's the relationships that get the results, not the results that get the relationships. And so that opened my mind. And then I became the second youngest UK chief executive, local government chief executive. And chief execs are normally from financial or legal backgrounds because they're there to protect the council. For me, from my back, I'm there to protect the public. That's what a public servant does. So there were very few chief execs that weren't, dare I say, IQ orientated. And that enabled me to do various things in a different way. And link up here where Baxter's and Walker's, you'll see Walker's shortbread and everywhere, and most people know Baxter's foods. But getting those type of companies together, along with the public sector, along with the charitable sector, to create a community, because normally they're all in their own silos. And the chief executive, who I cannot get any more money by making anything happening because I'm on a flat rate. And I believe there's a huge power and influence in being the person that can bring people to the table without any concept that I'm getting something out of it.
Right.
And I think that trust, those values, public service, community, and although I got fed up with the politics, because needless to say, a lot of it is self-service and public service rather than private service rather than public service. I gave that up after 4 years, and in the Highlands of Scotland, the 5 Fs, forestry, farming, fishing, fabrication, which is the oil industry, and fermentation, which is the whiskey, employment-wise, we're all doing that.
Right.
Because everything's being, run a distillery with 2 people pressing buttons. So for me, I then set up the Highlands first call centre, because you can do it anywhere in the world, as we know. And the Highlands at that time, I'm talking the mid-90s, had the new ISDN networks just put in, and the contracts we got through Capgemini were actually all the parking fines for London. So we're answering the phones in the Highlands, good morning, good afternoon, parking fines department, London Borough of Ealing. And then people would say, well, that place in the high street next to Woolworths.
Did you end up calling Mark's cell phone a lot?
His was an automatic straight through.
Do not answer calls from Les.
So that also showed me we set that up on a set of values because nobody wants to pay a parking fine. So that was actually quite pressurized work for the people on the phones.
Yeah.
So we set up based on that values, and I learned more. And BBC Two Money programme, as it was at that time, came up to film because of this new concept, back office working. And then I joined the Leadership Trust because they were expanding. And what was interesting about the trust was back in the sort of 60s, 70s, 80s, there were management programs on, but this was a leadership program set up for leadership, probably one of the first in Europe, leadership focused. And it was set up by an ex-SAS guy and his wife, who was a psychologist. And it was a 5-day program. Companies came from all over the world. And it was just stunning. It was the whole experiential aspect.
Wow.
Stunning stuff. And to be honest, most of the conversations at midnight and onwards were about how these men in an IQ world had got to the top, had thought they were helping their families because they were getting better money, better homes, better cars, better holidays, but they'd actually lost the connection with their children.
Wow, goodness me. How profound is all of this? And boy, you've touched upon another of my favorite things in my agility work is special forces, right? How cool is it? How cool is it to sit around a campfire kind of thing like you're describing and hear stories and examples and insights and mantras and phrases from people that have, again, done it in the real world, like Special Forces, SAS, etc. So, oh my gosh, Mark, any particular thoughts or questions or comments from you so far?
No, I mean, it's just, look, I know I've got to know Les a lot over the last 3 years, and the whole focus that he brings, he just touched on it there at the end, the whole focus on EQ, vulnerability, connectivity.
Yeah.
We've worked with Les in YPO, in VAB, and, singularly, he's best in class globally in that area and is so pioneering. I was just kind of curious on Les's first steps into the whole peer-to-peer world. Maybe if you could share a little bit on that.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, what happened, what was interesting for me is when I set out on my own about 20 years ago after the Leadership Trust, what was interesting then for me is that we always did a pre-course interview to sort of prepare people for what they were going to experience. The post-interview was less focused on, and for me, that was where I spent my time because many people left jobs, left relationships, left families as they found themselves. So we're back to the whole thing of who is the authentic you, which all Gabor Mate's work now really is focused on in terms of 95% of all ill health is predominantly due to where, the old nature-nurture thing, it's now 95% nurture and about 5% nature because everything in us is activated by our location and our environment. And I suppose for me, I spent more time debriefing people out the Leadership Trust than selling more courses. So I was getting more pressure, again, in the IQ way. Finally, they've been on the course, they paid the money, we need more people now. And I'm going, sorry, but my values are we have to help this person re-enter the world from a different perspective. And after that, when I went out on my own, the peer group side of things emerged because 3 out of the first 4 companies I worked with were run by YPOs. And I kind of was very interested in why that was the case, because I was going and say, well, they would say, what are you going to do? And I would go, I don't know, because I need to speak to your people. Well, how long is it going to take? I don't know. So what are you going to do? I don't know. And so they trusted me as a person because I really didn't have a process. I never ever fill in what you call it when you put something out and you have to apply through that process.
An application form, yeah.
Like a contract.
Yeah.
Tender.
Yeah.
I've never done one in my life because it just doesn't fit.
Right.
It's about the relationship and then it's about the peer group because what I then found is I put all of those chief executives from the companies we're working with together, a bit like YPO, but not that I knew anything about it at the time, in a peer group where they would learn from each other and share and develop and deepen and have a support group for when there was an emergency.
Yeah. Wow.
So for me, the peer group appeared out of that. And that's not dissimilar if you look at even the World Cup at the moment. Croatia got through, no real stunning players as such, but in terms of Morocco got through as well, based on a team and a team concept of working for each other and learning from each other and covering for each other.
And I do believe that Les just opened the door to talk about the World Cup, Mark.
Les said he wasn't going to talk about it. Yeah.
No, we won't go there. We won't go there. It's like France,
No,
Argentina.
but a quick one on that. Literally, I was just listening to a different podcast on Croatia's success, and as the whole ethos is built on a lot of these players know each other they come up through two main teams. It's a huge team sport environment, water polo, basketball. It's all like team sport, like ethos based. So they're not just like thrown together. These people know each other for years, and they've all kind of growing up in that team sport environment. So it's just super interesting.
And it is exactly, and it is that idea that, on paper, to some degree, teams look similar, don't they? Right? It's Argentina, France in the final. Of course, they have different players, different personalities, but on paper, by and large, right, you could make a case that on paper they're kind of equal. So it's this, but what makes the difference on the day, on the field, in the moment, as to why one in the heat, under pressure, especially if things aren't going your way and you're down at half time, let's say, what is it that allows one team to outperform the other? And I suspect, Les, that is at the heart of the questions that you've been wrestling with all these years. Can you tell us more about that?
For me, it's around, if you put on a mask, nobody knows who you are. So this back to Covey's habit 5, seek first to understand and then be understood. If, as Gavin Matty would say, if you put on a mask and you're asking people to help you, in what way can they help you? They can't help you in the way that you need help because they don't know who you are. So in the heat of battle, especially in the sports field, you will, through training, let alone anything else, start to learn about people's nuances, their peculiarities, the way they need supported. And you'll hear a lot about, you go back to, dare I say, Sir Alex Ferguson, and the way that he would deal with players and get them in the way that he needed to get them. In Aberdeen, going back before he was in Man U up here in Aberdeen, the way he would put a team together and bond them. It's the relationship again. It's the forums as such and peer groups, until somebody starts to deepen it or a facilitator takes you deeper, they will never get out what they ultimately need and want.
Yeah, which is go ahead, sorry.
And all of that in the work that I do for YPO, inevitably the retreat will be about going deeper. They want to go deeper.
Right. And obviously that is a great segue in a moment into, peer forums and what you're going to be doing with us in the UK. But for our American listeners, of course, Sir Alex Ferguson used to be the coach, the manager of Manchester United many years ago. He left, like 10 years ago almost, I think?
Yeah. Probably more, but 12. Yeah. But the Americans will know Beckham because he's over there now with the soccer team.
Exactly. And
Inter Miami.
Of course, Man United used to win everything, and now they don't. And they haven't done for a long, 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 long time. And whether you when you watch the English Premier League or not, you've heard about that story and Cristiano Ronaldo and all of that kind of stuff, just for our American listeners. So anyway, this is obviously more of a UK-oriented episode, everybody, because we are
the Americans own Man United, the same.
That's right, they do. That's correct. You do, everybody. Congratulations, you own Manchester United, or commiserations, perhaps, for the last 10 years. No doubt, you will bounce back. So this is more of a UK-oriented episode, everybody, because we're very busy right now entering the UK with forums, and Les is forming a forum that we'll talk about more in a moment. But Les, before we go there, could you tell us just a little bit more about this concept of inscaping rather than escaping?
Yeah, for me, in general, if you're in pain or you've been trauma as a kid or whatever it is, most people will escape to drink, drugs, sex, porn, work, exercise, whatever it is. And we get that high that just covers over our pain. But the pain never really goes. And inscaping is really about the journey inwards. Escaping is the journey out. Inscaping is, as Hamill said, the internal journey is the longest one. Because that's a journey to self-awareness. Now, that's about the person as much as it is about the forum, because it's just the same thing. If the most advanced thing on the planet is the human body, we have 72 organs in the human body, and not one organ controls any other organ. Each organ does what it needs to do when it needs to do it. In an ideal world, that's exactly how organizations should be. And W.L. Gore, that are global, they're a matrix, no titles, no job descriptions, but on average earn 12.2% more year-on-year profit than similar organizations that are focused in the FTSE 100. So if you put money before meaning, you'll get less money.
Wow.
If you put meaning before money, you'll get more money.
Yeah.
Wow. And so for me, the inscaping is about the self. Who am I as a person? Am I prepared to be vulnerable? Because for me, the first role of a leader is to be confidently vulnerable.
Beautiful.
Because if the only constant in life is change, what enables people to change is their self-awareness starts to shift. Now, that is not based on, needless to say, the brittle IQ stuff. IQ created in 1902 in Paris, France by Alfred Binet, because the French government were about to create the first ever state schools in France, and they were going to be really expensive. So Binet was asked to create a test to make sure the idiots did not get in.
Wait. Does this mean we can blame the French?
We can for IQ.
Oh!
But for IQ, we certainly can. Because that's why it became the Stanford Binet test later on, because the Americans in Stanford created the Stanford Binet test. But
not really French people. We love you, French people.
But IQ was a negative test, and it still is.
Awesome. Wow, Mark, this is why we are so grateful that you introduced us to Les. Every time I interact with Les and have a conversation, it just takes me deeper and deeper and deeper. And I know, as you've said, Les, the inner journey, I mean, there's the outer journey, the outer universe of systems and structures and strategies and all that stuff. But there's this inner journey of beliefs and hopes and dreams and
it's the human journey,
intelligences, and it's the human part. It's the heroic part, right? It's the actualization, the self-identity, and oftentimes
back to Maslow,
that's where
the top end is the self-actualization, to be all you can be.
That's where the root of everything is. Everybody, Mark, what a fantastic introduction you have blessed us with Les.
I'm just happy to get him off my hands, to be honest.
I was about to say, he's just happy to move me on. Stop pestering me.
So, Les, so we're delighted that you are engaging with us in the UK, amongst others, to help build out our footprint of forums. You are doing a virtual key group that will be nationwide of key executives, leaders, managers, I'm sure leaders more than managers, as you've begun to articulate. And it'll be virtual and to some degree blended, perhaps with, rendezvous and get-togethers occasionally. Tell us a bit more, Les. What is it about peer forums as the sort of work you love to do? What is it about becoming a forum leader with REF that has sort of got you, floated your boat, got you engaged, and sort of lighted your passion to work with us?
Because ultimately for me, the peer group, the forum type work is the most enjoyable work I do because it goes deeper. Mm-hmm. I'm not brilliant at what I would put, in a hierarchy of communication where bottom is ritual and cliche, and then it's gossip and fact, then it's ideas and judgments, which is the first time you see the person, which for most conversations drop below that. And then up second top level is emotions and feelings. And yes, you can talk about change at ideas and judgments, but things will not change until you get to emotions and feelings. Because that's where the change takes place. That unless you're prepared to change in some way, how can you ask others to change? And we all know what it's like to work for a manager rather than a leader. And so for me, peer groups over the last real less than 10 years now with other organizations looking at peer groups, that's where the real business is done, and where the conversations, I can remember one mixed peer group in a European country where the topic of conversation, not that it started with that, but ended up in premature ejaculation. Now, when are you going to have such a real conversation about something that others are prepared to share openly and with authenticity? I just go, this is the business for me. If people can talk about their most vulnerable aspects and learn what it's like from others that are in the room, that's a mixed room, that for me is just the real McCoy.
Yeah. And actually, I just had a call this morning with a prospect, and just talking through the whole, forum experience, and it was exciting, kind of reliving a little bit, when I joined a forum for the first time, I had no idea what to expect, absolutely no idea. And just as you said, having seen a few different forums over the years, the moderator we had, the facilitator for the first one, was just incredible. And he just enabled this new group to achieve a depth, a trust, and a level of vulnerability in an incredible speed. And we were only meeting once a quarter. Yeah. So there was a more staggered rhythm. We were having virtual and in person. And it was just incredible. So just reliving that part of those experiences today, and just came back to that moderator facilitator was so important to just bring that trust and that cohesiveness together, so you can get vulnerable with total confidence. Yeah.
And what I love about the last couple of minutes, listeners, is kind of the shock factor of where the conversation just went, as a fantastic example of really what Les is saying is, when you have created the conditions in a peer forum of trust, caring, transparency, safety, there is truly nothing off limits that you can't talk about in a peer forum. Now, obviously, we talk about a lot of business stuff, a lot of basic stuff, a lot of leadership and culture and teamwork and strategy and structure and all of that kind of stuff. We do talk about in a peer group. We do talk about the external journey, of course, and we talk about that inner journey at great length. And people will progressively self-disclose the most personal things like you've never heard before. And as Les and Mark know, I facilitated 4 peer group forums for 15 years with 40, 50, 60 members at any one time, 200, 300 over those years, every month. And it's almost like, Les, by and large, there ain't any issues left that I haven't heard, processed, disclosed, explored in a peer forum, of equally shocking, with equal shock factor as to the example that Les just used. And so, everybody, this is the power of being able, when you come to a peer forum, to hang it all at the door. Hang the armor, the thick skin, the ego at the door. Come on in, be fully you.
And that full you is the key, because I talk about, in terms of the 4 quotients, physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual, to live, to learn, to love, to leave a legacy, human living, human doing, human being, and being human. In a peer group, you can be human. It should be, if it works correctly, it's the most safe place for you to show yourself 100%.
Unlike probably everybody, listeners, probably unlike anything you have remotely experienced before. We often get asked, right, is a peer forum, is that like a networking thing? Is it like a training thing? Is it like a coaching thing? Is it like a consulting thing? What is it? No. I mean, there are elements of those things to it, but no, it is a much, much, much deeper thing than that does deal with basic business things. Should I buy? Should I sell? Should I stay? Should I go? Should I double down or unplug? All of those basic things. But as Les is articulating, and I know, Mark, you'll comment more, you can't just talk about parts of the problem. You have to talk about the whole problem, the whole challenge, the whole solution. Yeah. And often many of the solutions are on the inside and to do with us and our beliefs and our perspectives and our assumptions and our identities and our fears and hopes and dreams and all that. Go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, look, we obviously, people find it easier in the beginning to talk about business, in your updates. But the depth and the growth as a forum comes from, the personal and the family, primarily the personal, just that exposure and being comfortable.
Yeah.
I would have said in my forum experience, we probably had in presentations, probably only like a quarter end up being business related. And they're the ones that are the easiest to get through. Yeah. Because you can share experience. You can talk about, like that example, we're buying a business or we're selling or we're exiting. We're going into new markets. They're quite like tactical things. Whereas the personal stuff and the family stuff is just, there's layers and layers of complexity to explore. And, coming out of, almost like going into the monthly kind of forum it's something you look forward to, because it is that like, oh, I can't wait for my next forum. I've got so much I need to like, share. And I want to, it's even being in some forums where I felt like on particular topics, I have no shared experience. That's never I have no shared experience, but there are generally areas that you can actually find that, it's relevant to share. It could be slightly different, but it's different viewpoint. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd almost put it as it's a nourishing place to be. It's a bit like plants. Plants need a climate and a soil to grow best. And you look for that. This peer groups with the right set of values are the place to nourish human beings.
Yeah,
I do. I mean, again, I just reiterating that I think so much of it, and look, you both have much more experience than me in moderation and facilitation, that the standard is set by the moderator, by the facilitator. Like I've been blessed to have some amazing ones, neither of them either of you for sure. But that I think you guys take it to a whole new level. But it is that's such a huge part of the voyage. Yeah.
You'd have been a lot of work, Mark. I
still am, Mike. What do you mean I would have been? I still am.
We'd have had to make a special project of you.
I'd have just had him standing in the corner with a pointed hat on.
Facing the corner.
So, but in all seriousness, everybody, what Mark just said is absolutely true, and it's a perfect segue. That obviously not everybody is cut out to be a high-performing facilitator, moderator, leader of a high-performing forum peer group that is able to fully explore the outer universe and the inner universe and all of the alignment that occurs in between. So we truly feel, as no doubt you've heard, listeners, blessed to have Les coming on board our team. As we heard, he's going to be forming a virtual nationwide group for key executives, senior leaders, And Les, beyond, the basics of the kinds of, roles that those people will have that we're looking for, a little bit deeper, what kind of members are you looking for? What kind of members will fit in beautifully and play along and give and get huge value from the kind of group that you want to form?
Basically, I suppose those that are open and curious.
Yeah.
And willing to learn.
Yeah.
The key thing with all change is leadership. Do you care about yourself and are you developing? Are you growing? Do you want to achieve things? Do you want to learn more stuff? So I often say, if I'm doing a workshop of some description, do you come with an open mind prepared to change?
Yeah, beautiful.
And it's as simple as that. It's not about degrees or qualifications or schooling or whatever. Yeah. It's just a human being that wants to improve themselves and help and improve those around them, to serve themselves and their community.
Beautiful. Well, that's a great place to start landing the plane. Everybody, that was another episode of the Peering Podcast. Find us at thepeeringpodcast.com. As you heard, we've got to know Les a lot more during this call, and we can't wait to go onwards and upwards with the forum that Les will be building in the UK.
I've got a wee poem to finish with.
Oh, perfect. There we are. Let's go, Les. Take it away.
Needless to say, it's from the ancients, the American Indians before we IQ'd America.
Okay, perfect.
The Creator gathered all of creation and said, I want to hide something from the humans until they're ready for it. It's the realization that they create their own reality. And the eagle said, give it to me, I'll take it to the moon. And the Creator said, no, they'll go there and they'll find it. And the salmon said, I'll take it to the bottom of the ocean. And the Creator said, no, they'll go there too. And a buffalo said, I will bury it on the Great Plains. And the Creator said, no, they will cut into the skin of the earth and find it even there. And the grandmother mole, who lives in the breast of Mother Earth and who has no physical eyes but sees with spiritual eyes, said, put it inside them. And the Creator said, it is done.
Oh, beautiful.
It's the realization that they create their own reality. And
it's
that's
hidden.
What peer groups are about.
Is hidden in plain sight. Right inside of us. Les, thank you so much. Mark, how are you gonna follow that?
Well, I'm gonna come and stand in the corner at Liz's session, so that's I've got my spot already.
Awesome.
And we've got the roadblocks up, so the Sassenachs can't get back up to Gordon.
All right. Well, hey, Mark, it's great to see you. Les, great
Fantastic,
to see you.
Les. Thanks, Mike.
Beautiful. Thanks so much.
Guys.
See you next
Thanks,
time,
guys.
everybody.
Thanks.
That's it.
Take care.
Journey.
All right.
All the best.
Bye.